Hi, howdy, folks. Welcome to Sham and Covy's Emporium of Awesome. My name is Sean.
And my name is Corey. And today we are going to be starting a new series here on the channel. We're doing an MCU retrospective now that the Infinity Saga has come to a close and we're ready to move into the next phase of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. We're going to be just going back to the very beginning and just talking about each movie in turn and what we thought of it, and what, looking back on it now, how our opinions may or may not have changed now that we've seen how the Infinity Saga concludes.
Yes.
So today, what are we watching? We're going to be not watching. We're going to be talking about Iron Man, the introduction, the first movie in the whole thing, the thing that kicked it all off. Um, So, Iron Man, if for some reason you're not familiar, we'll start this off by saying all of these videos could contain spoilers. So, if you don't want any spoilers, leave now. But hit like and subscribe to our channel before you do that.
Yeah.
Um, so, Iron Man, it came out in 2008, was the first movie in Phase 1. Um, and it's directed by Jon Favreau. And it stars uh, Robert Downey Jr. As Tony Stark. Then you've got a bunch of supporting cast, but the big ones: Terrence Howard plays Rhodey or Captain Rhodes. Jeff Bridges plays Obadiah Stane. Gwyneth Paltrow is Pepper Potts. And then there's a whole host of supporting characters as well, but those are the main characters throughout the film. So that's just a brief overview. So Iron Man, it came out in 2008. It's the very first one. So we'll just go through and talk about this movie. So, Sean, what did you think of this movie, and how do you think it's changed so far? What did you like best about this movie?
I like best thing I like about it probably is that it reminds me of how it kicked off of all the superhero movies, like the nostalgia stuff of it from the looking back on stuff. Like it was like the first thing that came out, kind of. There was other ones, but this started the whole series of them on stuff, and knowing that stuff was very exciting. And even looking back now on stuff, you can still get that same feeling like, oh, this was the beginning. So this is where it started, and that stuff. And I really liked how that still held up. Whatever else, there was a lot of nostalgia stuff about rewatching it.
Yeah, no, totally, I agree. When with this movie, I mean, I really felt I was kind of actually a little bit different than that. The first time I watched it, I didn't. I kind of had an inkling because of articles I had read and stuff that they were doing this cinematic universe, but I didn't really grasp what that meant. I felt when I first watched it, I was expecting like kind of like the X-Men series of movies, right? Like, oh yeah, they'll make one, they may make sequels and stuff, but they'll be standalone movies,
Kind of
and
standalone
you
things,
know,
yeah.
because book movies, this wasn't the first comic book movie, but it was the first in a concept of a shared universe that wasn't just sequels, right? And I didn't really
Yeah.
get that the first time around. Like when Nick Fury shows up at the end and mentions the Avengers Initiative, that was like a oh crap, they're actually gonna go there. Like they're actually building towards something. And I didn't realize that. Rewatching it, that after credit scene really meant nothing to me, right? So it actually took away from the movies a little bit, knowing where it was going. Um, but that didn't mean I didn't enjoy the movie. It's just one of those things where back then I was just like giddy after seeing that after credit scene. Rewatching it, I was just like I knew it was coming. The bit of the surprise was gone, but I
Yeah,
was,
because
yeah,
yeah, like I said, I understand now. So yeah, because like I said, we never saw anything like this, like a shared universe before, so you didn't know what to expect. You didn't know where it was going, whether it was going to work, things like that. So you didn't know that
yeah,
until many more movies down on some of that, and then you're like, oh, okay, also it's setting this up, and then you got excited even after the movies, and so like that for the next one, then the next one, the next
yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about uh what we what we liked. Actually, we'll save that for the end. Uh, what we like least. Um, why don't we talk about the characters, the casting? So obviously our main character is Tony Stark, Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr.
I still
Um,
think, yeah, I think all the casting and stuff like that is still great. Stuff, right? Like whether it comes to Iron Man and all that stuff, Pepper Potts. Like all of them and stuff like that and stuff were really well casted on stuff. Even like Jeff Bridges on stuff as the bad guy, like he's a great actor and that on stuff. So I thought all the characters on stuff were very fitting on stuff to what you kind of felt. They were really good.
Yeah. Um, I actually think rewatching it, I appreciate Tony Stark as a character more now. The first time I watched it, it was just kind of like I wasn't a big Iron Man fan to begin with when I first watched this movie. I knew who Iron Man was and I knew who Tony Stark was and everything, but he wasn't like one of my top characters, and I think that was for a lot of people. He was kind of a B-list character in the Marvel universe back then. But rewatching it, I'm just like, yeah, you know what? Like he nails it, and he nails it consistently throughout the whole thing. But even
Yeah,
from the very beginning, I felt like that, like if you compare, for example, the very end, obviously, Tony Stark, how they conclude his entire story, like that element of the character was there throughout the whole Infinity Saga, and from the very first movie, like even the first scene when he's in the Humvee
yeah,
going down, like he's like, oh, no gang signs with the peace sign and everything. Like he was a bit more arrogant in this movie, and I think he played up the
for sure.
arrogance. Um, but he was in. I think it was endearing, right? Like he just you can't help but like Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. He wasn't a favorite actor of mine. In fact, I can barely recall other movies he was in before this. I think he was in like maybe
Sherlock Holmes.
Sherlock, yeah, and a few like rom coms and things, but he wasn't like a big name to me. So this put him on the map, obviously. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, he was
and
perfect. He was made for. He was one of those ones that are made for the role, right? Like after he started doing it,
yeah,
like he
like
Tony Stark.
they couldn't. He's one of those characters they couldn't recast, right? Like, there's no way if they recast Tony Stark, it just wouldn't work. Like after seeing his performance, no way.
Yeah,
Um,
like it's interesting to see on stuff his development on stuff. Being like cocky billionaire on stuff, being like he's still like that later on, but he's way more so like that on stuff towards the beginning on stuff until he starts getting more humble on that and starting meeting more characters and things, and it
yeah,
peters off a little bit on stuff, but it's still like there.
yeah. And the other thing, speaking of recasting, let's talk about uh, War Machine Roadie. So in this movie, it's Terrence Howard. It's the only, and then they recast him for the next one for Don Cheadle, and for the rest of the
Yeah,
saga, it was Don Cheadle. I really didn't like Rhodey in this movie. Rewatching
it's
it, maybe
yeah,
it's because I like Don Cheadle so much in like the other movies and War Machine, and I like him as an actor. But rewatching this, it actually took away from the movie because I knew he wasn't continuing in the role. I'm just like, you're
yeah,
not doing it like Don Cheadle would. Like he didn't have the same attitude. He felt a bit more
yeah.
of like a kind of like a
Like it would have been
whiner.
different if he would have been the same character. Like I say, if he would have stayed in Awesome, we probably would have felt obviously different in Awesome. But because he's only in this one, he gets recast. Don Cheadle is so amazing and stuff like that throughout the whole thing with his acting and all stuff. Yeah, you kind of you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Stuff. We know Don Cheadle's coming the next one. So come on, let's go.
Yeah, and yeah, and then Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow. I mean, I could take her or leave her, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of
Yeah.
her. And rewatching it, I was just like, yeah, she kind of phones it in a little bit. I felt rewatching it. I wasn't a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of her, and I didn't really buy the romance. I knew, but I don't know if I felt like that before. I feel like I didn't really think about it too much the first time I watched it, but rewatching it, that's kind of fell flat for me. I didn't feel
Yeah.
like those two were destined to be together or anything. It's just kind of like, why is she sticking around him? He's kind of a jerk. But anyways, but then the villain, and like Obadiah Stane. Rewatching it, the first time I watched it, I thought he was kind of bland. He's like this tycoon billionaire guy.
Mm-hmm.
But the first time I watched it, I mean, the fight scenes were great and everything, but I was just kind of like, yeah, okay. Jeff Bridges is good, like he does a good job with it, but the villain itself goes kind of one note.
Yep.
But rewatching it, I actually kind of liked it. I kind of
Oh
liked
yeah.
the
See, I'm the same. That's like that. Like saying when I watched it the first time, like saying I liked him as an actor and the way he did it, but I don't know. I just the villain just it just fell flat for me. Like you're saying, also like you felt the first time. I still felt the same way in this one on stuff that it just kind of wasn't as epic on stuff as I wanted it and to be on stuff with him in the big getting to be with the big suit and things like that. I don't. So like I said, that I found that stayed the same for me.
yeah. So moving on from characters, the plot, how it links to the rest of the universe now that we've seen the rest of it. I feel like this movie, obviously, it sets up Tony Stark real well as a character. I don't
Yeah.
really feel like as part of the entire Infinity Saga, it really does anything to build a foundation other than character building. It doesn't really do anything as far as like the saga as a whole, other than
No,
be the
not really.
fact that like it just doesn't really link. Like they talk about these, and maybe we'll see more with the new Shang-Chi, Legend of the Ten Rings that's coming up, which not to go on off a tangent, but it's supposed there's Legend of the Ten Rings. How can it not be about Mandarin and stuff, which
Yeah.
we'll get into when we talk about future Iron Man movies. But I feel like they were called those terrorist guys that capture him. They're the Ten Rings guys, right? And I was like, that kind of went nowhere. I thought those characters might
Yeah.
come back, but they didn't.
See, I guess I think when I watched it and stuff, I realized I was hoping that they were gonna be more of the main villain, like the main villain guy and stuff from the Ten Rings. I thought he was gonna come over to like America and stuff like that, seeking revenge. I think
Yeah,
that kind of fell flat and stuff like that, where all of a sudden it just went to which I got Jeff Bridges' character also, which was fine, but I was wishing it would have been more and brought them over and done a little bit more. He didn't really do much after Tony kind of left.
yeah, or especially after Tony went in and like went back and like saved that village from them and blew up all of his guys, but
Yeah,
but left him alive. And they even showed him, I think, later that he was still alive, but then he never showed up. Really, nothing really happened with him. And yeah, I think it might have been better. And I didn't think this the first time around, but I think it might have been better if Obadiah Stane was more of a mastermind figure instead of getting in the suit and suddenly like
yeah,
duking it out with Tony. If he had links, because it was already shown that he had links to that guy, right?
yeah,
Like he was selling him the weapons and stuff. So I felt like if he had brought him over and then put him in a suit and then have like a duke out with him as the physical match, and then brought Stain to justice and not killed him off because Marvel has a bad habit of just killing off villains so they can't recur. I
yeah,
feel like the movie would have been stronger if they had kept Obadiah Stane around, but and maybe had him in the second movie as a recurring villain instead of what's his name, Justin Hammer. But
yeah.
yeah. So, uh, what uh, what else about the plot or anything?
No, I don't think so. Like I say, I felt on stuff that it flowed really well and things like that. But is that another talking point? It's a different part, and so like the next part.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the next is just like action. The action, does it stand up? The effects, does it stand up? I think it stood up really well.
I think so. I thought it was like I thought it was still great. I thought stuff, all the action scenes and stuff were really good. They still looked really good in that. So yeah, I think they stand up for sure.
Yeah. Um. Oh, and also the one thing I'll say about the that I didn't realize, I swear it took me forever to realize this. Even I probably didn't realize this till like Age of Ultron or even further than that. Maybe Civil War is when I finally realized it. That what's his name? Paul Bettany is actually the voice of Jarvis in this movie.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Like I say,
I
he was
like
from the very beginning.
like I just think that's great. Like looking back on it, that made me smile. Like hearing his voice, I was like, it's Vision, especially after watching like WandaVision and everything. Like his voice was fresh in my mind. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, that's Vision. That's Vision right there. And so rewatching that made me really happy knowing where that was going with the AI and everything. So that actually boosted this movie for me. Just thinking about like how that they kept that consistency from movie one to the movie 21. It was Paul
yeah.
Bettany. It was so that was fun. And of course, what's his name, Agent Coulson. I really wish he had been around more, especially after they brought him back alive in Agents of Shield and everything. I
Yeah,
really wish he
I,
would have shown up in more MCU.
I really wish they'd bring him back and stuff like that, and so that they would actually come back on. So eventually, I don't think they're ever going to. But I think it would be cool for him to come back on, so knowing that he's alive and things. But
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess just to sum up, like, how do you feel this movie stands up now, watching again overall, versus how you felt the first time around? Would you rate it the
I,
same, higher, lower? We don't need to give
it's
it a
fun.
rating, but
It's not exactly the same experience because the first time also has the nostalgia of the whole thing and stuff, so that makes it a little bit more. But rewatching it again also doesn't make it any less, right? Like I say, it's still great and stuff like that to know where it came from and stuff. It's still like I saying, pretty much a great movie and stuff. Like saying the only thing I didn't like is like the way the villain and stuff like that, and like the final battle and stuff like that was kind of a little bit anticlimactic and stuff. A bit I felt, but other than that, I think the rest of the movie and stuff was great. So I still, same thing I thought on stuff back then, and I still think the same. No,
okay. For me, rewatching it, just to sum up my view on it, I think Surprisingly, I didn't think I would, but surprisingly, I think I enjoyed it more this time around, even though there was things I didn't like as much, like War Machine and stuff.
Yeah.
Overall, though, rewatching it, knowing where it was going and how it ends up and where all these characters are by the end of the saga, and knowing what's to come, I feel like it was slight, not like it's super high. Like it's not even in my probably top five of overall MCU movies. We'll talk
Mhm.
about tier lists later on in a future video, um, but yeah, I think it's slightly better than it was on rewatching it. I think I enjoyed it slightly more even than the first time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it stands up.
That's cool.
It's still good.
That's cool to see that and all that stuff for the very first one that came out and all that stuff, right? Like,
Yeah,
yeah, that it holds up on something it does so well.
yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about Iron Man?
I don't think so. I think I covered all that stuff, everything that I felt rewatching this.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, we will wrap this one up here. So yeah, Iron Man. The next one up, we should mention we are technically the second movie that came out was The Incredible Hulk. Because of some rights issues, it's very difficult to find anywhere to watch that movie online without having to pay for a separate subscription. It's not on Netflix. It's not on Amazon. I mean, we could pirate it, but don't pirate's bad. Um, so I don't think we'll do a video. We're gonna move into Iron Man 2 for the next one. So if you enjoyed watching this, hit the like button, leave us a comment, let us know. Did you like Iron Man? Did you like it the first time around? Is it better now or worse? How do you think it held up over time? And yeah, subscribe if you want to see more of these videos.
Yeah, sounds
All right.
good.
Until next time.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.